Hi guys, today I'm going to talk to you about body composition and the different ways of measuring body composition and the accuracy and really what it means when we take a body fat percentage. So I'm going to start off by just explaining to you a little bit about what body composition is. It's basically the measurements of the relative percentages of your different body tissues. So that would be bone, lean tissue or muscle mass, and fat tissue. Okay, it basically categorizes all three of those things. Um, it's basically used for a measurement of progress. Okay, we really cannot tell you how much body fat you actually have on your body because we would have to dissect you to do that, and obviously that is not very plausible. So basically we use body composition to get an estimate of your percent body fat, and then we can use that to track your progress through a training program. Depending on your goals, it is not necessarily necessary. Many clinical situations really don't require a body fat percentage because if you're coming in and you're morbidly obese, we don't need to know what your body fat percentage is. We basically just need to get you to lose weight. And so really whether you're 40%, 35%, 50%, it doesn't really matter. You're just not at a healthy position and we need to get you healthy. In a sports setting, it might have some issues, especially when it comes to how your body reacts in water. Also, too, when it comes to making different weight classes, they're going to use body composition to basically determine how much fat you have on you, how much lean tissue, and they're going to want you to have as much lean tissue as possible. And even then, it may not be the best way of tracking progress or even determining athletic ability because performance is not just based upon your body's physiology. There's a lot of other factors that come into it. And like I said earlier, we cannot actually determine your true body fat percentage. So the idea that you're going to go get a caliper reading done and you're 13% and that's your actual body fat percentage, it may not be. It's probably not your true body fat percentage. And then there's also some populations that really don't conform to the regression equations that are used, especially children and the elderly. They do not respond the same in the regression equation, so we'd have to use a special regression equation for that. Your body does have what's called good fat and bad fat, and it's really not called good fat and bad fat, it's called essential and non-essential. But when you're talking to just the general public, good and bad is fine. You do need a certain amount of body fat for physiological functioning, and when you go below that level, let me tell you, your physiology will suffer, and you can do permanent damage to your body. For males, it's much lower than females. Men can survive on about 3 to 5% body fat. Women need about 8 to 12. And even for females, that number is not solid. We don't really know where women lie. Some women, their essential fat is much higher than that. Some are much lower. And that just comes down to the way a female's anatomy works. And the greatest fear when it comes to women and body composition is that they become too low in body fat and they start becoming amenorrheic. A lot of people don't give that enough credit. Amenorrhea is very serious, actually. A lot of people don't think of it as being that serious, but it really is because you're basically losing your ability to synthesize estrogen, and you basically lost your period, you've reduced your bone mineral density, and over time it's just going to get worse. And you can also damage certain body processes due to low estrogen levels. So basically your woman's estrogen is going to plummet, and that's going to cause a whole host of other issues for the woman in the future. Bad fat would be a percent body fat that's over what you need. So it's over the healthy range, and it actually could be associated with chronic disease. So the fact that you have this much fat on your body puts you at risk for health conditions. So that's what we would refer to as bad fat. For men, the ACSM considers 10 to 20% between healthy range. Okay, so some men may not like the way they look at 20% body fat, but technically they are considered healthy according to the ACSM. You may get different numbers going with different organizations, but the ACSM tends to follow the research pretty well. And for athletics and aesthetics, that number might vary. So you might find someone who want to be 8% because they're a physique competitor and they have to have a certain number of percent body fat to be able to show off their muscles. So like I said, athletics and aesthetics, it varies. For women who aren't necessarily in a sport and aren't necessarily competing in a figure competition, the healthy range is actually 20 to 30%. And again, there's variance with women. So I tend not to be as strict with women with their body fat percentage just because we don't know where their essential and non-essential line is. And women do need more fat than men do physiologically because of the fact that women menstruate. They have to have more fat on their body than a man does. So a woman should never get down to 3 to 5% body fat, ever. That's way too low. Body fat percentage can be measured a number of different ways. We have hydrostatic weighing, we have a bod pod machine, there's skin fold measurements, or bioelectrical impedance analysis. So skin folds are what's really most common in the field. So if you are working with a trainer, or even in some clinical settings, we will use skin fold measurements. They are accurate, but only if the technician is skilled. And in order to be considered skilled, you have to have done about 300 or more. So most people doing them are not considered skilled skin fold technicians. But it is an easy way to measure body fat composition, and it's also very inexpensive. You basically take various measurements of different skin folds around the entire body, and then you sum them up and put them into a regression equation, and that equation will spit out your body fat percentage. You do have a larger margin of error than the bod pod or hydrostatic weighing, just because of the issue with the technician. If the technician's not good, you're going to get a crazy, erroneous number that is not even accurate at all. You also have to be able to differentiate what's fat and what's muscle, and sometimes that can be different depending on how elastic a person's skin is. If someone has saggy skin, that muscle and fat line might become difficult. If someone's got very tight skin, that also might become very difficult. Then you have the bod pod and the hydrostatic weighing, which are your two most accurate. Okay, so if you have a chance to do bod pod or hydrostatic weighing, you're going to get the most accurate number from those two. They have about an equal percent error. And they both measure your body density, and from there you plug your body density into a regression equation, and then that will give you your body fat percentage. Bod pod does this through measuring air displacement, and the hydrostatic weighing will do this through water displacement as we dunk you in water. Hydrostatic weighing is a cheaper solution, requires very little maintenance. All you really have to do is replace the scale in them, and it's much cheaper than replacing a bod pod. Okay, and a lot of PhDs and a lot of people who've done research will disagree on whether the hydrostatic or the bod pod is more accurate. I tend to believe the hydrostatic is more accurate just because it's more practical. All you need is basically a tank, running water, and you need a scale. That's really about it, like a chair scale. And so it's much cheaper than buying a bod pod, and it lasts a lot longer. The bod pod is very expensive, and although under proper circumstances it's as accurate as hydrostatic weighing, it does not last as long. So it tends to break generally after 5 years, and it doesn't give you as accurate of readings. So for that reason, I would prefer to use a hydrostatic weighing, just because you won't have to replace the tank. The tank will last forever. You just have to replace the scale. Another issue with the bod pod is that it has to be in a room with a set temperature reading. It must be away from an air vent or a door. So it needs to be in an area where there's no air vent directly on it and there's no door, which could affect air displacement within the room. Otherwise, the results of the test could be compromised because it's also going to affect air displacement. The patient also has to make sure that they keep their entire hair covered with the shower cap, and this is an issue with women. Women with long hair have a hard time keeping that hair covered with the shower cap, and then the hair holds onto air, and that affects how much air you displace. Also, body hair can displace some air, so it's also important that you shave your body hair off so that when you go into the bod pod, it won't store air molecules in the hair. Then you have basically bioelectrical impedance analysis, which is very inaccurate for the most part, just because it's very much affected by hydration state, how much you sweat during the day, where your body fat is located around your body, where you carry your fat. But basically, fat has a greater resistance to electrical flow. So they basically measure how easily a current moves through your body, and then they can determine how much body fat percentage you have. Not as accurate, but it is a lot of times used in clinical settings because it's easy to use. As far as selecting the best method, you really want to go with hydrostatic weighing or bod pod. Those are going to be your most accurate. Hydrostatic weighing, again, I would prefer it just because it is the gold standard. By that, it is the criterion reference. So all the other body composition systems have been designed around the regression equations used for hydrostatic weighing. So hydrostatic weighing is what we compare other body composition methods to. It's also the oldest used method, and it has never been replaced as the gold standard. Basically, body composition analysis will give you an estimate of the body composition. Don't think that that number is your actual body fat percentage, because most likely it's not. We can't really tell how much body fat you have on you, but we can use body fat analysis to measure progress. However, you have to understand that under a lot of circumstances, it is not necessary, and if it's done incorrectly, can yield a falsely high or falsely low number, and that can affect a person's performance and a person's psychology. So I hope this was helpful. I hope that when you go get a body composition done, you have a better idea of which one to pick. And thank you for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.